I just came to say that my husband and I are adoptive parents of 4, 3 of which came from this county through the foster care system, and I support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've been a lifelong resident of Washington County. I've lived here my whole life. Went to school here, went to school at Greendale. This has been my home for years. I never thought that we would be here addressing this tonight. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful for y'all. I'm thankful for this privilege. I'm thankful, number one, for the privilege to be able to speak before y'all tonight. And I'm thankful that y'all have brought this issue before us, that we can have this conversation tonight. And I'm thankful for all my brothers and sisters and everybody that's here tonight that has stood up for what's right. I thank God for that. I thank God. And I've got here 400, 450, 500 signatures for people that support this resolution. And even as their voices are crying out, and I can't help but to think as I sat there and I thought today what I was going to say tonight, and so many of the things that have been said, I'm so much in agreement, so much beyond what I could begin to think. But I think about the 65 million voices that are crying out right now from the ground. The blood of the innocent, right? We make our decisions. We make our decisions, and we suffer the consequences for those decisions. But those children that are in the womb, they're suffering for decisions that they didn't make. And they've not had their right to life. But I think about that, and I think about the blood that is crying out. Innocent blood crying out from the ground. And we look at our nation right now. 65 million babies that have been killed, that have been murdered. I mean, it's not anything else but murder. 65 million of those that have been murdered, their blood, the innocent blood that is crying out from the ground. And we look at our nation and we look and we see where we're at. We see how depraved our nation has become, how far backwards it seems that we're going. It seems like that drug addiction has taken our land. It seems like every kind of evil has taken our land. It's because we've legalized it and we've made everything okay. I'm thankful tonight, though, for this, and I'm in full support of this, and we will stand behind you in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a 19-year resident of Washington County, Virginia. For nearly 10 years now, I've been reaching out to women getting abortions at the facility in Bristol, Tennessee, and now in Bristol, Virginia. I do this through my website, lifebristol.com, and also by going to the local abortion facility to plead for the lives of innocent children there. There are many Christians, some of them here tonight, who stand with me in these outreaches. I have spent hundreds of hours on the sidewalks and public areas around the Bristol killing facility, and I can testify firsthand to what goes on there. First, murder goes on there. Innocent preborn children are brought there to be mercilessly exterminated. They are real human beings, precious children created in the image of God, and Psalm 127 says they are a gift. Human beings are equally valuable inside and outside the womb, and God says you shall not murder. The most important reason to keep abortion businesses out of Washington County is that abortion is murder, and allowing it to go on in this jurisdiction will bring guilt on us before God. We are the strong, and we have a duty to protect the weak. If we allow businesses that murder babies to take root in this county, we are inviting God to judge us. He knows, He sees, and He will judge. I can testify that the Bristol, Tennessee facility consumed much time and resources from the city as well. Police resources, for instance. There were so many calls to Bristol, Tennessee law enforcement in recent years that by the time the abortion facility left Tennessee for Virginia, the Bristol, Tennessee police had made it policy that they would no longer answer our calls at that location. We were informed of this when one of our people called 911 for an incident where a clinic escort sideswiped a Christian standing in the public right-of-way with her minivan. Time and resources were also consumed from the police chief, district attorney, and city attorney, who spent time in meetings and on calls with attorneys regarding our First Amendment rights to peacefully advocate in public areas. 5 times between 2018 and 2022, the city of Bristol, Tennessee received legal letters regarding the infringement of First Amendment rights of Christians advocating for babies. These letters had to be responded to by the city attorney and appropriate correction given to law enforcement officers. It brought conflict to the surrounding neighborhood. Among many other things, Loud noise was often blasted into the neighborhood through loudspeakers and bullhorns. Clinic escorts used loud siren noises to drown out the voices of Christians reaching out to moms, and they played explicitly sexual and blasphemous music to deter us from being there. Clinic escorts were so physically aggressive and threatening toward those standing for life that in 2020, I filed petitions for protective orders in Sullivan County, Tennessee. While the court openly recognized the reprehensible behavior of the clinic escorts, they denied my petitions. We appealed, and the Tennessee Appellate Court found reversible error in the original decision, vacated that judgment, and the cases are still pending. The reason this issue is full of conflict is that abortion is murder, not health care. The evil of this practice is so deep that it cannot exist quietly in any community where there are God-fearing people who love their neighbors as themselves. Now is the time for you to take decisive action. A statement that you are pro-life is not enough. You must go further than that if you want to keep Washington County from being a safe haven for baby murder. Jesus said, "Whatever you do for the least of these, you've done for me." What are you going to do today to ensure the least little ones in Washington County are actually protected in a real way? The book of Proverbs warns, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. I beg you, gentlemen, do not faint in this day. Make no mistake, you are the strong, and you can protect the weak. May God give you courage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Isha Uhas. I live on Little Wolf Run Road in Bristol, Virginia, which is in the Tyler District in Washington County. I graduated from Duke Law School. I'm a licensed Virginia attorney. My bar number is 45789. After the Bristol City Council voted to move forward potentially adopting a zoning ordinance on this topic, I and another attorney, Josh Hetzler, did some extensive legal research to determine whether they had the legal authority to do what they did, pass their zoning ordinance. And I'd be happy to give every supervisor here, as well as your county attorney, Lucy Phillips, a copy of the memo. It's about a 4-page memo laying that out. But the short answer is that Washington County, just like the city of Bristol, has overwhelming authority to adopt restrictive zoning ordinances to keep abortion facilities out of the county. First, let me address the constitutional issue, okay? I teach constitutional law, and ironically, I discussed this case with my class yesterday. The U.S. Supreme Court in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health completely changed the landscape. I'll quote from the opinion. Procuring an abortion is not a fundamental constitutional right because such a right has no basis in the Constitution's text or in our nation's history. It follows that the states may regulate abortion for legitimate reasons, and when such regulations are challenged under the Constitution, courts cannot substitute their social and economic beliefs for the judgment of legislative bodies. The court went on to clarify that such legitimate interests include respect for and preservation of prenatal life at all stages of development, the protection of maternal health and safety, the elimination of particularly gruesome or barbaric medical procedures, the preservation of the integrity of the medical profession, and the mitigation of fetal pain. What this means is that abortion restrictions will now be subject to rational basis review. That is the lowest level of scrutiny and no real obstacle. So, constitutional issues done. All right? Now, you may be asking, all right, what about the Dillon Rule? Okay? Well, the Dillon Rule, that's a rule of statutory construction recognized in Virginia and provides that a locality's governing body, you guys, only have the powers expressly granted by the General Assembly. So the question is, has the General Assembly granted you guys the power to do this? All right. Now, the Dillon Rule enjoys a fearsome reputation, but it's also no obstacle in this case. The General Assembly has expressly granted this power to Washington County in clear and unambiguous terms. I can point to no fewer than 5 specific provisions in the Virginia Code granting Washington County this authority. Okay, since my time is limited, I'll only do one. Okay, that's Virginia Code 15.2-2280. It provides in relevant part, any locality may, by ordinance, classify the territory under its jurisdiction or any substantial portion thereof into districts of such number, shape, and size as it may deem best suited to carry out the purposes of this article, and in each district it may regulate, restrict, permit, prohibit, and determine the following. the use of land, buildings, structures, or other premises for agricultural, business, industrial, residential, floodplain, and other specific uses. This is a really broad statute with a broad grant of authority, and it has been interpreted by the Virginia Supreme Court in a very expansive manner. Okay? I'm going to quote one Supreme Court case, that is Resource Conservation Management versus Board of Supervisors of Prince William County. Okay, it's a 1989 Virginia Supreme Court opinion. They interpreted that specific language that I just read to you and said, we think that by this language, the governing body of a locality is expressly authorized to prohibit a specific use of land. The specific land at use in that case was a landfill. The court went on to say, quote, while the language of the statute does not specify a landfill as one of the uses that may be prohibited, such specificity is not necessary even under the Dillon rule of strict construction. Hence, we think the board acted well within its delegated power in prohibiting the use of property for landfills in this case. So, if a landfill, which is legal, just like abortion is in Virginia, can be prohibited using zoning regulations, so says the Supreme Court, you also have the authority to do it. All right? You can banish an abortion facility from here. So that's just one statute. There's 4 more, and each one independently provides you a basis to rule. Okay? Put them all together, it's overwhelming. One final point. Case called Kenyon Peck versus Kennedy. Zoning ordinance are entitled to a presumption of validity. So you pass this thing, it's presumed valid. Okay? Any litigant that wants to challenge it has to have standing, number 1, and then number 2, you're going to be presumed to have acted validly. So I have copies of the memo available to pass to you guys, or Ms. Phillips, should you require.
Thank you.
I'll also be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
For 5 years, every Wednesday, I would stand on the sidewalk and minister in front of the Bristol, Tennessee abortion mill. And my primary objective was, out of obedience to Christ, was to pray for all those who were going in and for all those who would pass by, to declare the truth and love of Jesus Christ to all who would hear, and to offer help and to be willing to walk with anyone that was going into that place, to walk with them toward life. The response varied. Initially, at first, it was just some people flipping me off and flipping others that were with me off, calling us names, and then becoming threatening. At times, people would even throw food at us, donuts, noodles, bread, soups, soda, a few unknown substances. And then one Wednesday, while I was there, I was talking to a man who was there to abort their child. And as I was having a conversation with him, I asked him if he was a Christian, and he turned around and walked to his car, and he pulled out a gun. He lifted it up in the air and chambered a .40 caliber round in his gun. And before he leveled it out, the most ironic thing happened. The woman that was the mother of his child, that they were there to kill, stood in front of him and pleaded with him not to do it. That woman did for me the very thing that I was there to do for their child. Over time, a lot of pro-abortion protesters would come out there. They started screaming, yelling. I have actually heard them yell at young girls and elderly women and call them whores and incestuous sluts and scream at them and say vile things at them to try to get them to stop singing, to stop praying, and to stop offering help to those there. None of these people the Christians were never threatening. I never saw anyone scream or demean or call names to anyone going in there that was there to minister to them. And I actually saw one of the workers once, that was witnessed by multiple people, that one of the workers actually swerved and hit a pastor with the mirror of his truck as the pastor stood on the side of the road. That's the kind of atmosphere and kind of substance that you will have when you bring an abortion mill to this county. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what actually occurs inside of those mills. And it's interesting that these pro-abortion protesters actually reveal the great darkness that occurs inside. And we do not want that in Washington County, Virginia.
physician. I'm a board-certified emergency physician, which means I will take care of you if you have a heart attack or a stroke, or if you get shot or stabbed, or if you're bleeding from a miscarriage or abortion. What I don't do is perform abortions. Why? Because I'm an emergency physician, and there is no life-threatening emergency that requires an abortion. This has never been true. It is a lie that the abortion industry has very successfully poisoned this country with. Abortion is not and never has been healthcare. As a doctor who upholds the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm, my job does not require me to murder a baby to save a mother. My job doesn't require me to murder anybody. If someone is having a life-threatening pregnancy emergency, it is always the case where we do everything we can to save both the mother and the child. Our goal is to stop the bleeding. So if it is not necessary for me, whose job is to save lives, to murder a person, to save the life of a mother in a hospital, obviously abortion businesses like the one in Bristol and others that will open in this area are not necessary for medical purposes. The only reason these abortion businesses exist is for the profit of the owners. When a woman naturally miscarries, she will have uterine bleeding. These embryos or fetuses are not healthy or stable if the woman is bleeding in her uterus because that's where the baby is. If the woman continues to bleed, the woman will miscarry and the baby dies naturally. If a doctor intervenes, we stop the bleeding, we transfuse blood, we stabilize the lining of the uterus. We don't perform an abortion. They are intentional, targeted removals of healthy pregnancies. That's what an abortion is. These women that are naturally miscarrying are not the women utilizing these businesses. Another lie that has been spread is describing a tubal pregnancy termination as a type of abortion. That doesn't even make any sense. That is not a viable pregnancy ever. A baby can't grow to full term in a fallopian tube. They will die 100% of the time naturally. This situation will almost always kill the mother as well unless a good physician intervenes. This is not a viable pregnancy. It's not even in the uterus. This is why stabilizing a woman bleeding or near death from a miscarriage or ectopic pregnancy has never and will never be considered an abortion. Do not let these abortionists lie to you. Again, these women are not the ones utilizing these businesses. You're being lied to by these abortionists that perform these abortions to make money. What they do is not health care. The business in Bristol, Virginia, and abortion businesses across this country perform elective abortions, which is murder. These are stable, healthy pregnancies. They give the woman pills to kill her healthy pregnancy, or they use suction to remove the baby which is still alive and growing. They use the ultrasound to view the pregnancy in the uterus, and they target the healthy pregnancy. This is not a difficult procedure. It takes a couple minutes, and that's why it can be performed in random buildings. Most people in this area, the mechanics, electricians, plumbers, builders, do more technically difficult work than this. If a person has complications and is worried that they're going to die from this procedure, they come to the ER. Why? Because the hospital and the ER are healthcare, not the abortion business. The purpose of an abortion business is to make a profit by ending the life of a living human being. That's it. It's not hard. It's not complicated. Nowhere else in healthcare is the sole purpose of the doctor visit to murder the patient and not have them leave at the end of the appointment. This business currently in Bristol, Virginia is not advertising solely to the people here. The owner's from Mississippi, and because her business was shut down to the abortion laws there, she's advertising for her patients in Mississippi over 500 miles away to come here to your community. When Bristol throws this out of their town, they and others like them will be looking for another location to continue their slaughter. Washington County residents, stand up and tell them they aren't welcome here. The abortions performed at these abortion centers are not medically necessary. The abortions are elective, optional procedures. They don't save anyone. They destroy a life. We don't need this in Washington County, Virginia. We don't need patients traveling from all the surrounding states whose governments have fearlessly taken a stance against this evil. This board has been given a great responsibility to stand up for the truth. If you aren't convinced and you think places like this provide health care, the next time you have a heart attack or a stroke or get shot or stabbed or are bleeding to death, feel free to visit that business in Bristol or any other abortion business that will open in this county if you don't stand up. Thank you for your time, and good luck to you if you choose that option.
Thank you.
The citizens in Washington County certainly do not want a facility, and this type of facility in the county, whose sole purpose is to take the life of the unborn child. The Lord has allowed you to sit in this position at this time, such a time as this. We, the citizens of Washington County, desire the strongest resolution or ordinance and/or ordinance that would prevent an abortion facility from entering the county. A resolution that would stand the test. Planned Parenthood sees Washington County, Southwest Virginia, as a strategic location, which borders Tennessee, which has strict laws, Kentucky, and West Virginia. It would be a horrible reputation for Washington County would become the abortion destination for those states and other states that surround us. I don't know if I'm correct on this, but I looked up the Washington County's motto, and what I read was rich past, promising future. Washington County indeed has a rich past, as we can look at this monument out here that y'all so graciously and wonderfully moved and established out here. But if we allowed the abortion industry to enter our county, our rich history will be stained with the blood of thousands of unborn children. The promising future for these unborn children, such as scientists or lawyers or doctors or teachers, pastors, electricians, and so on, would be extinguished by a prior 4 steps that would reach into the womb and pull parts of the children out at a time. If that doesn't sound barbaric to you, I don't know what it does. Or maybe this salt saline solution that goes into the womb that burns the child. This reminds me of in the Bible, Molech was a god, and he was a metal god. And what they did, his arms were placed out like this, and they would take the child and put it in that metal arms, like this. Start a fire under it, and as it heated and the child got grease and everything on the skin, it would slide down into a fire. How gruesome that sounds. Abortion is gruesome. We heard rights of the women. What about the rights of the child? The child has rights. Sometimes, half the times, it's a different sex than the mother. Different blood types, different DNA. What about that child? I think we have a responsibility to that child. They talked about, well, that child might be born in poverty. Indeed it might. But let me tell you, that child is born. That child is alive. I've had kids that in school that were poor, but they've done quite well in Washington County. And so I'm so thankful that you did this, because children are at stake. I've worked with children all my life, at church and at school, concerned about them. I can't imagine harming one of those. Can you? I cannot. So I hope you'll pass this resolution and this ordinance and send it to the Planning Commission, whatever it needs to be done to have a strong resolution, not just a facade out there. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to all of us. And I want to thank all the people that came out that are pro-life, and thank them also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've been a Washington County resident for 35 years. I'm not coming in here to talk like everybody else. And I thank you so much for just giving me a voice. When I was 16 years old, I became pregnant. By the recommendations of my family physician to my parents, they packed me up on a cold winter morning and drove me to Roanoke, Virginia. There, they walked me in to an abortion clinic. I can tell you what that room looked like. I can tell you what it smelled like. I can tell you what my nurse's face looked like. But I can also tell you that that doctor came into the room and never said one word to me. I did not want to be there. My parents were told that I had a blob of tissue inside of me. But I can tell you that I know that I was a mother. I had every indication from morning sickness to other aspects of the body changing, and I knew that I was a mother. I cried on that table while they used a suction machine to empty my uterus. I left that day a different Terry than the one that arrived in that family car. I can tell you that my child would be in her 40s, and I wonder every day what kind of person she would be, what she would have become, how she would have changed the world. I'm going to tell you that it wasn't good health care for me, because I can remember it like it was yesterday. And it's something that I've lived with all of my life since that day. I can also tell you that before the passing of my father, he grabbed me by the face and he said to me, "I am sorry. I was the one who was scared. You would have been a good mom, Terry. It was me." I have had to work through the forgiveness of my parents, and I am still working on the forgiveness of myself. I am telling you that this is the ladies that will be coming. They may say that they want this abortion, and they may want to say they don't want this problem anymore. But I'm telling you, they go home and they face these feelings of knowing that they ended a life. I would like to say, please, please work to make Washington County a safe place for our unborn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight on behalf of the weakest and most vulnerable members of our society, the preborn. I have for the past couple of years done outreach at the local abortion clinic in Bristol, Tennessee, reaching out to young women intending to abort their babies in hopes that they might reconsider and spare the lives of their children. From the moment of conception, every single fetus inside of the womb is a unique and beautiful human being with intrinsic value, and just as much of a right to life as any one of us who is in this room tonight. We believe, as this resolution states, that life begins at conception. It is a scientific fact that any credible scientific institution will confirm, such as Harvard Medical School. It is incorrect to say that biological data cannot be decisive. It is scientifically correct to say that individual human life begins at conception. Professor Michelle Matthews Roth, Harvard University Medical School, and Mayo Clinic. By all the criteria of modern molecular biology, life is present from the moment of conception. Professor Heine Gordon, Mayo Clinic. If human life begins at conception, isn't it then our moral responsibility to ensure that abortion, which intentionally terminates a pregnancy and takes a human life, be completely and totally outlawed and abolished? The lie that has been propagated for over half of a century that abortion is healthcare must be exposed for the lie that it is. Abortion isn't good for anyone. It takes an innocent human life and often causes severe depression in women who have them, because killing your child is not a natural thing to do. Abortion has no place in our county, our state, or in our country. We must do everything within our power to protect the weakest and most innocent members of our society. Allowing so-called healthcare clinics to operate here will only bring harm and destruction to our communities. I implore you to not only pass this resolution, but also fight for even harder legislation to be put in place that will make it entirely impossible for a woman to murder and dismember her child in Washington County. Life begins at conception. Every fetus is a human life. Every human life has intrinsic value, which makes this a human rights issue. Abortion is the intentional termination of a pregnancy. Abortion is murder. Murder is morally wrong, and abortion must be abolished. Thank you.
I'm a homeschooling mom, and I'm very concerned about this issue. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of Virginia declares that all men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights of which when they enter society, they cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. One portion of our posterity are the preborn and potential preborn in our community. They most assuredly deserve protection so that one day they may experience happiness and safety with the rest of us. I would also argue that they are already part of society when they are in the womb. 99% of biologists concur that life begins at conception. I am not a biologist, but I know when human life begins. It is not traveling through the birth canal or any other marker that makes an unborn baby human. The power invested in you is ultimately to protect the innocent and punish the wrongdoer. In this case, the innocent are the unwanted preborn babies who cannot speak for themselves. The wrongdoers are the practitioners, assistants, and cognizant parents who seek to prematurely and intentionally end the life of a human, often profiting financially in the process. While the pro-choice argument may seem compassionate on the surface, the woman's choice ends when another life begins. Family planning begins before the bedroom. Yes, it is a religious issue for many of us, but it's also a scientific issue, it's a political issue, but most of all, it's an issue of life and death, and that's why it's so important to me and many others in this room. Personally, I did not move here from New York 3 years ago to see it turn into the place that I left, turning from a culturally rich and historical place that Washington County is, with family-friendly values, to a place riddled with the long-term deleterious effects abortion unquestionably has on parents, families, and whole communities would be most unfortunate. You do not need a womb to have a say in this issue. You need a heart to have the courage to protect the unborn. To be honest, Washington County already has enough problems to deal with, including poverty, drug addiction, and the like. Welcoming and enabling the gruesome practice of abortion would only compound our county's problems. But there are people doing admirable work to uphold what is good and to enhance the community, like Pathways Pregnancy Center, Crossroads Medical Mission, and others. Let us get behind these organizations and others like it, not prop up those who would aim to do the very opposite. If we make the honorable decision in providing a safe haven for life, we would not be alone in doing so. Both neighboring Russell and Tazewell counties have already passed strong resolutions declaring themselves to be sanctuaries for the rights of the unborn. Concerned citizens like myself will stand by you as you hopefully do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. We thank you for your public service as you represent us. We recognize that this evening you stand as gate guards of our county. You men have put yourselves in places as intercessors for those who have no voice. We call on you to guard the gate for these little ones who we fight for tonight. Would you condemn them to death for the actions of others? Should these children be the sacrifice? I call you men to be fearless and unapologetic in pursuit of righteousness and true justice according to God's word. This decision tonight is not about your comfort, your salary, or your public figure. We have gathered tonight to beat back the ravening wolves who would tear these little ones apart. Stand with us, and we will stand with you. Stand for wickedness, and you oppose us and the living God. I will close with a word from 1 Corinthians chapter 16. Be brave, be strong, act like men. Let all that you do be done in love. And lest we should forget, sic semper tyrannis. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've lived in the county for the last 17 years. It has been the only place that I have called home as an adult since I left military service. I live just off Francis Mill Road with my wife and 6 children, age 19 to 2. I'm one of the owners of MXI. We own 25 industrial acres in the county, 150,000 square feet of industrial space, and we employ approximately 75 people with a payroll approaching $6 million in this county. My company, MXI, is proud to have made Washington County its home for 35 years from day one that we opened the doors. The values of the abortionists do not coincide with the values of the vast majority of the citizens of this county. We value life, children, and families. Life begins at conception and should end with natural death. The miracle of conception cannot be understated or understood. It is one of the great mysteries of life. The merging of two people's DNA into one, at conception, we see immediately the spark of life. You can watch conception on a video on YouTube, on the internet. It is one of the great mysteries and miracles that we can experience on this life. Most biologists agree that life begins at conception. There's no other concrete point we can look at to determine when life begins. Abortion violently ends the life of an unborn human person, and it does so for no other reason than the target of the abortion is unwanted. Nowhere else in our society do we tolerate the rubbing out of human life for the reason that the person is unwanted. We don't do that for homeless people. We don't do that for drug addicts, for criminals. When I was growing up, Bill Clinton and the liberal side of the political aisle said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. This theory is somewhat understandable, and it acknowledges the tenuous moral grounds that abortion has always relied upon. However, the left now promotes abortion as a moral good. They say people should be proud of their abortions. This Malthusian development for the disregard of human life is disgusting. It's a stain on our culture, and it should not be tolerated. It is the primary role of the government to protect the rights of all human persons, the same, regardless of their size, regardless if they're wanted or unwanted, if they're born or unborn. Abortion is not health care. It's a straw man. Properly ordered health care seeks to restore human bodily and mental functions to the normal state. You may have high blood pressure and they give you medicine. Reduce your blood pressure, reduce the strain in your heart. You're back to normal. Pregnancy is a perfectly normal state for a woman to be in. Life on earth, all life on earth relies on male and female coming together to reproduce. For hundreds of thousands of years, generation after generation of humans have successfully given birth and raised children, and all of us in this room can be thankful that they did so successfully. Because pregnancy is a normal state, the abortionists are not doctors. Their procedures are not health care. Abortion is the violent end to human life. I would encourage you all to look at pictures of abortions. They're all over the internet. The procedures have been described here by medical professionals. Listen to the testimonies about abortion procedures, and you soon learn that the violence of the abortionists, you will soon learn of the violence of the abortionists that they inflict on the most innocent of us, the unborn and our women. I support the county's development, and since I've lived here, we've seen dramatic growth. Washington County is a wonderful place to live, build a family, and we want to keep it that way. Speaking for the vast majority of my employees, my wife, my 6 children, I can say that we fully support the resolution and the development of zoning regulations to prevent abortion facilities now or ever in our county. Washington County is a tourist destination. People are attracted to our mountains and our culture. They're both beautiful. We need to keep it that way. We do not want to be known as an abortion tourist destination. So I encourage you to vote in support of this resolution and as quickly as possible pursue zoning regulations that'll keep the abortionists out of our county. Thank you.
I am the medical director for the Pathways Pregnancy Center and have been a resident of Washington County for 23 years. I've practiced medicine in Bristol and delivered babies for most of the last 20 years. I have thousands of times felt a baby wiggle underneath my fingers as I was checking the mother's abdomen to listen to the heartbeat or check the position. I've never once felt the baby wiggle when somebody stuck a trocar into its brain. I want to discuss the medical aspects of abortion, and I'm not going to go into any gory details, but I would like to explain some facts which are easily misunderstood and confuse the situation. I think most of us in here want to be good people. We as Christians, myself, are called to help people in need. But the abortionists use our desire to help to make it easier for them to hurt. What do I mean by that? What do they always bring up to justify abortion? What about rape? What about incest? What if it is needed to save the mother? All of those are horrible, awful situations, there's no doubt. But from the sound of their rhetoric, you would think that that was the justification for about half the pregnancies that go on. They bring up these areas to make people rationalize what they know to be wrong and to say, well, I guess it's okay in that situation. But if you will, please listen to the facts. The state of Florida records the reason for all abortions and tabulates the statistics on the abortions in that state. These can be found at the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration. In 2020, there were 74,868 abortions reported in Florida. 74,868 in Florida alone. The reported cases due to incest, 0.01%. That's 7 or 8 if you round up. The percentage due to rape, 0.15%. That's about 100. Percentage due to mothers' lives being endangered, 0.2%, or about 150. All those awful situations. But abortionists don't mention those numbers when they attempt to justify opening abortion mills wherever they can. They use those situations to get their foot in the door and then open up the floodgates. The population of Florida is 2.5 times the population of Virginia. So those numbers can be extrapolated down to even less numbers for our entire state. In other words, there's no justification for an abortion mill in our community except for convenience. Now, I appreciate the civility of the pro-abortion minority here. I can assure you that it is a far cry from their behavior at the abortion mill in Bristol. Several days per week for the last several years, small groups of people have met praying and singing and expressing their First Amendment rights to call out to patients entering and leaving. I would suggest that you examine some of the videos of the pro-abortion crowd behavior that are online. They have threatened, taunted, screamed obscenities at our children, pulled a gun, as Charles said, licked, followed people home and to work, dumped drinks on people's heads, basically bullied in any way they could imagine to try to provoke and intimidate the godly people standing on public rights of way and adjoining properties. While the local magistrates turn a blind eye, I have faith that our local Washington County Sheriff's Department would not stand idly by in such a situation. But why even put them in that situation? I trust the board can see that our community has no desire for a destination killing field in our community. This resolution is a good start, but it is not a good fence. Robert Frost said good fences make good neighbors, and I would suggest that you pass this and additional zoning requirements with teeth, because it is not enough to say, we don't want you. These people will say, so what, and flip you off and move right in. Now, the idea that discouraging abortion mills from coming here is going to discourage other small businesses is ridiculous. Just ask the operators of the Bristol Casino how they feel about the circus that goes on out their front gate while abortions are being performed. And if not having an abortion mill keeps a business from wanting to open here, then good riddance. And when Tennessee trigger laws took effect and the abortion mill closed, I didn't see any other businesses close or move away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Steve Murphy. I'm the pastor at St. Peter Presbyterian Church here in Abingdon. And I want to thank you for having the courage to take up a conversation regarding abortion in Washington County. Our family moved here 17 years ago so that we could live and raise a family in a conservative area. We firmly believe that the Bible teaches that life is sacred, it is holy in the sight of God, and as such ought to be protected. How much more the lives of those who are defenseless in the womb. Since last week, when we first became aware of the topic being discussed tonight, our church has been praying for you and will continue to pray for you that you will have the courage to speak and to act for those vulnerable unborn among us. You can say that the state alone can affect change in this area, but like everything else, we must speak at the local level for what we hold to be good and right and true, and it is your responsibility as leaders in this community to do exactly that. If you believe that tonight's business is merely secular in nature, I would just point you to the fact that the scriptures teach clearly that there is no area of life out of the Lord's sovereignty. He is clearly Lord over it all, both sacred and secular. Therefore, we must submit to his word and order our lives by it. Me, in my home, and in my church. You, in your lives, in every sphere that God gives you. Even if tonight's action only amounts to a statement, leadership and influence begin with such courageous statements. If you will not stand for any measure that supports life, or if you move to table it, I believe that you will have missed an important opportunity to take a faithful stand for both men and women, born and unborn. Your inaction will demonstrate where you stand on this issue. I heartily encourage you to join any voices that may suggest a stronger action this evening, such as an ordinance with real teeth, as others have mentioned, that will not allow abortion in this community. And again, thank you for having the courage to take up this conversation. You've taken a lot of criticism this evening, and I want to counter that with my thanks and continued support of you. I think you're well aware the population of Washington County is overwhelmingly pro-life. I pray your actions reflect that wisdom to whom you all appealed in the opening invocation. Your Heavenly Father, prayed to in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. A lot of voices here today. I'll add just one more from history. A man you all may have heard of said this: I often hear it said, do not bring religion into politics, but this is precisely where it belongs, where it ought to be brought, and set there in the face of all men as on a candlestick. You may have heard of Charles Haddon Spurgeon before. And even though such a famous man said such good words, there's really only one voice that needs to be heard, one voice that you need to follow, and that is the voice of your Lord God Almighty, who said, fear God alone and serve him. Thank you.
Thank you.